My name is Nora Vale. I'm 27, and I've always had a thing for tools. Not the shiny kind people buy because a commercial told them they could become handy in a weekend. I mean real tools. Heavy ones, scratched ones, tools with rust in the corners and stories trapped in the handles. The kind that smelled like old oil and sawdust and somebody's patience. Mine lived in a dented red Craftsman toolbox I inherited from my grandmother when I was 15. And that box had a name, Clara. Not legally, obviously, but I called it Clara because that had been my grandmother's name, and because Clara was reliable. Clara never asked why I wasn't more like my older brother, never sighed at my boots, never told me I should want something better. Clara just waited quietly, full of pliers and wrenches, ready for me to make something broken work again. And in a way, that toolbox raised me more than my family ever did. Now, about that family. My older brother Martin was the golden child, always had been. Valedictorian, student council president, scholarship kid with a polished smile that made adults lean in. My parents treated him like he was a miracle in loafers. Me? I was good with my hands. That phrase followed me everywhere, wrapped in fake admiration like it was supposed to soften the insult. "Nora fixed the guest sink," my mom would say, and my dad would add, "She's still finding her path, with her tools." Like I was a phase, like I'd eventually grow out of being useful. The truth? I didn't go to college, couldn't afford it, didn't want the debt, so I worked. Plumbing, drywall, tile, electrical once I got certified. Hard work, dirty work, real work. I liked it. But to them, I was background noise, the one you call when something breaks, never when something's worth celebrating. Clara's funeral happened on a random Sunday. I had just finished a brutal job replacing a rotted subfloor, knees aching, shirt soaked, still thinking about whether I overcharged the client when I stopped by my mom's garage to grab my tools. But Clara was gone. At first I thought someone moved her. Then I saw the trash bags, 3 black ones near the side door, one open, metal glinting inside. My metal. And right on top, my wrench, the one with my initials carved crooked into the grip, half buried in leaves and junk. I just stood there staring until Martin walked in, sunglasses on, smoothie in hand like he was late for a meeting with himself. "Oh," he said casually. "Yeah, I threw that stuff out." I turned slowly. "You what?" He shrugged. "That junk in the red box? It was ancient, Nora. Greasy. Honestly, it looked disgusting. You should thank me. Maybe now you'll focus on getting a real job." I didn't yell, didn't react. That's something you learn when you're the disappointment. Your anger gets labeled dramatic. Your pain gets dismissed as weakness. So you stop performing it for them. I reached into the bag, pulled out my wrench, wiped it on my jeans, and just said, "Seriously." He rolled his eyes like I was the unreasonable one. I drove home with that wrench on the passenger seat, bought a cheap pizza, sat on my couch with grease still under my nails, and stared at a blank wall for 20 minutes, while everything inside me went quiet in a way that wasn't calm, just empty. Then I opened Craigslist. The next morning, I went to an estate sale and bought a full set of used tools from a man who didn't want to let them go. They weren't Clara, but they felt like a beginning. After that, I worked like something inside me had snapped into place. 6 months, no days off, toilets, roofs, tile, rewiring jobs nobody else wanted. I said yes to everything. Not because I had something to prove. Okay, because I had everything to prove. I was tired of being the cautionary tale at family dinners, tired of being Nora with the wrench. I wanted to own something, something that didn't need their approval to exist. That's when Mr. Roscoe called. He owned a small hardware store on the edge of town, flickering lights, dusty shelves, the kind of place that felt like it had a memory. He was closing after 40 years and wanted to sell. I told him I didn't have the money. He told me not to waste his time. That night, I laid every dollar I had across my kitchen table, tips, checks, crumpled bills, and I was $14,000 short. So I worked more. Nights at a hotel doing maintenance, weekends on a construction site that paid in cash and silence. My hands cracked, my eyes burned, but every time I wanted to quit, I heard Martin's voice, "Get a real job," and it kept me moving. By April, I had enough for a down payment. The bank hesitated, but my friend Carlos co-signed after I fixed his flooded basement for free. Said I had hustle with a hammer. I liked that. I bought the place, turned the back into a workshop, the front into a shop, tore it apart and rebuilt it with my own hands. Painted the walls, built the shelves. Jonah, my boyfriend, complicated in all the ways that word implies, did the flooring because tile was his art. When we hung the sign, my hands shook. Nora's Repairs and Custom Installs. No frills, just fixes. And under it, because I wasn't fully healed and maybe didn't want to be yet. Built from tools you threw away. My parents didn't come to the opening. Martin didn't either. Only Uncle Gene showed up, handed me a six-pack, and told me I was a quiet builder, not a loud talker. That was enough. Business didn't explode. It grew. Slowly. One job at a time. One person trusting me, then another. A 5-star review that said I fixed a sink and maybe a marriage. I framed that. And then, after months of silence, Martin walked into my shop. Same polished look, same controlled smile, but something underneath it had shifted. Something tight. Something cracked. "Nora," he said, like we'd just seen each other yesterday. I was behind the counter, elbow deep in a broken shop vac, and I looked up slowly. "Well," I said, "look what the cat passive-aggressively dragged in." He smiled, thin and careful, and I knew before he said a word, this time he needed something. He didn't sit. Didn't even glance around the shop the way people usually do when they walk into a place built by someone they underestimated. He stayed near the counter, posture straight, like he was still in control of the conversation he hadn't started yet. "You've done well," Martin said, the words landing stiff, like they'd been rehearsed and still didn't fit. I wiped my hands on a rag, leaned back against the counter, and let the silence stretch just enough to make him uncomfortable. "You didn't come here to compliment me," I said. "So skip to the part where you need something." His jaw tightened slightly. There it was, that flicker of irritation he used to hide behind confidence. Then he exhaled, just a little, and shifted. "It's Angela," he said. Angela, his wife. Perfect resume. Polished voice, the kind of woman who made waiters nervous and hosts attentive. "She's in a transitional phase," he added, like the word itself could soften whatever had actually happened. I raised an eyebrow. "Transitional phase between jobs?" I asked. He hesitated half a second too long. "Corporate restructuring," he said. Translation? She got laid off. "She's exploring options," he continued quickly. "And we thought, just temporarily, that maybe she could help out here. You know, front desk, scheduling, customer relations." He said it like he was offering me an upgrade. Like my shop was missing something refined that only Angela could provide. I didn't answer right away. I walked past him, grabbed one of the spare tool belts hanging on the wall, canvas, worn, stained from years of actual use, and set it down on the counter between us. The sound was soft, but it cut through whatever illusion he'd walked in with. "If she wants to work here," I said calmly, "this is where she starts." He looked at the belt like it didn't belong in the same world as him. "Nora," he said carefully, "that's not really aligned with her experience." I almost smiled. "Neither was throwing away my toolbox aligned with common sense," I replied. That landed. He didn't flinch, but something in his shoulders shifted. "She has a degree," he tried again, quieter this time. "So do thermometers," I said. "Still have to stick them somewhere uncomfortable to get a real reading." His lips pressed together. He wasn't used to not winning conversations. "We're just asking for something temporary," he said. "So am I," I replied. "Temporary humility. See if it sticks." For a moment, neither of us spoke. The air felt heavier than it should have in a place filled with wood dust and metal. Then he nodded once, sharp and controlled. "I'll talk to her," he said. "Please do," I answered, already turning back toward the workbench. "And tell her, no heels, no blazers, and if she brings a Bluetooth headset in here, I'll personally throw it in the trash next to Clara." He left without another word, and for the first time since that Sunday in the garage, I didn't feel angry when I watched him go. I felt steady. Angela showed up the following Monday. Crisp white blouse, beige trousers, shoes that had never met dust. She paused just inside the doorway, like she expected the space to adjust to her presence. It didn't. I didn't. "You must be Angela," I said, nodding toward the wall. "Toolbelts are there." She blinked, then gave a polite smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I assumed I'd be handling more of the administrative side," she said. "You assumed wrong," I replied. "Here, we fix things." To her credit, she didn't walk out. Not immediately. She picked up the belt like it might stain her just by touch, tried to buckle it over her tailored outfit, and failed twice before getting it to sit awkwardly at her hips. I handed her gloves. She asked if we had a different material. I didn't answer. We started simple, organizing fittings, restocking shelves, labeling parts. Within the first hour, she misread half the inventory system, dropped a box of screws that scattered across the floor like metal rain, and asked if there was an app that could identify parts automatically. "There is," I said. "It's called Experience." By midday, I took her to a small job, a cabinet repair at a client's house. She followed me in silence, absorbing everything and nothing at the same time. When I handed her a drill, she hesitated, just long enough for the client to notice. "Is she new?" the woman asked, polite but sharp. Angela stiffened. I didn't soften it. "She's learning," I said. Angela didn't look at me after that. She focused on the work, awkward, careful, making mistakes but correcting them faster than before. When she stripped a screw, she didn't complain. When she smudged her blouse, she didn't mention it. By the end of the job, she was quieter. Not defeated, just recalibrating. Back at the shop, she stood by the counter, hands slightly dirty now, posture less rigid. "This isn't what I expected," she admitted. I shrugged. "That's usually where things start," I said. She nodded slowly, like she was deciding something she hadn't planned to decide today. "I'll come back tomorrow," she added. I studied her for a second. There was something there, not confidence, not yet, but not resistance either. "Be here at 8, I said. That night, after closing, I sat alone in the shop, the hum of the fluorescent lights filling the space. I pulled open the drawer beneath the counter and took out Clara's wrench, the one I'd saved from the trash. It was still bent, still worn, still mine. I turned it in my hand, feeling the weight of it, the memory of it. People like Martin thought worth came from Polish, from titles, from things you could put on paper. But standing there, in a shop built from everything they'd thrown away, I understood something they never had. Value isn't what you start with. It's what you're willing to rebuild after someone decides you're disposable. And for the first time, I wasn't the one being measured. I was the one holding the scale. Angela came back the next day, and the day after that. Then the next week. No announcement, no speech, just showing up. The blouse disappeared first, replaced by plain t-shirts. Then the trousers gave way to jeans that didn't fit quite right at first, like she hadn't decided if she belonged in them yet. By week 2, she stopped asking for cleaner gloves. By week 3, she stopped noticing when her hands got dirty. I watched it happen the way you watch something settle into place. Slow, uneven, but real. She still made mistakes, still measured twice and cut once, sometimes. But she listened. And more importantly, she stayed. Martin didn't come back during those weeks. Not in person. But I knew he was there, somewhere in the background, pulling at threads. You can feel it when someone like him starts losing control. Small changes ripple outward. Angela started checking her phone less, stopped stepping outside to take calls. Once, I caught her staring at the screen after a message came in, jaw tight, before she slid it into her pocket without replying. That told me everything I needed to know. One Thursday, we got called to a kitchen remodel on the west side. Half-finished job, impatient homeowner. The kind of place where every mistake echoes louder than it should. Angela was quiet in the van, watching the houses pass like she was trying to memorize something she hadn't appreciated before. "You good?" I asked. She nodded, then shook her head. "I don't know what I'm doing yet," she said. Honest. I respected that. "No one does," I replied. "They just keep going until it looks like they do." Inside the house, the problem showed itself fast, a warped support beam under the kitchen floor. Subtle, but dangerous, the kind of thing you miss if you only care about surface-level fixes. I explained the process. Temporary support, reinforcement, replacing the bad section. Angela listened, then asked questions. Real ones. Not to sound smart, but to understand. I handed her the measuring tape. "You take the first read," I said. She froze for half a second. Then she moved, measured once, then again, adjusted, looked at me. I nodded. She marked the line and picked up the saw. It wasn't perfect. The cut wavered just slightly near the end. But it held. It worked. The homeowner hovered nearby, arms crossed, skeptical. "She sure about that?" the woman asked, loud enough to cut through the room. Angela stiffened, but she didn't step back. "I'm learning," she said, voice steady. "And it's being supervised." Not defensive, not apologetic, just true. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. By the end of the job, Angela was moving differently. Not confident, not yet, but grounded. When we packed up, she didn't rush to clean her hands, didn't check her reflection. She just stood there, breathing, looking at the space we'd fixed, like it meant something more than the invoice. Back at the shop, she stayed a little longer than necessary, organizing tools, wiping down surfaces that didn't need wiping. "You don't have to stay," I said. She shrugged. "I know," she replied. Then, after a pause, "I want to." That was the moment. Not the first day she showed up, not the first time she got something right. That one. The quiet choice to stay when she didn't have to. Martin showed up the next morning. Same polished shoes, same controlled posture. But there was something off now, like the edges of him weren't holding as firmly as before. He glanced around the shop, taking in the details he used to ignore. The scuffed floor, the organized chaos, Angela in the back, sleeves rolled up, tightening brackets on a drawer slide without looking up. "She's still here," he said, like it surprised him. "Yeah," I answered. "She doesn't have to be," he added. I leaned against the counter. "Neither did I said. That landed differently this time. He walked a little further in, watching Angela work. She didn't perform for him, didn't pause, didn't smile, just kept going. That seemed to unsettle him more than anything else could have. "I've found her something," he said after a moment. "A position. Marketing firm. Good salary, clean environment. This," he gestured around vaguely, "was never meant to be permanent." I let the silence stretch again. Then I reached under the counter and pulled out an envelope. "You mean like this?" I asked, holding it up. He frowned. "What is that?" I handed it to him. Inside was Angela's last paycheck, untouched, folded neatly. "She didn't cash it," I said. "Said she hadn't earned it yet." His expression shifted, just slightly. Enough. At that moment, Angela walked over, wiping her hands on a rag. She glanced at Martin, then at the envelope in his hand. "You brought it?" she asked him. "I found you something better," he replied quickly. "You don't need to keep doing this." She didn't answer right away. She looked around the shop instead. The walls, the tools, the workbench. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out something small, folded, worn. She placed it on the counter. I recognized it instantly. The note. "You'll thank me when you get a real job." The one Martin had left years ago when he threw out Clara. Angela looked at it, then at him. "You gave me this," she said quietly. "Not this exact one, but the same idea." Martin opened his mouth, then closed it. "I believed you," she continued. "For a long time, I believed this was what success looked like." She tapped the note lightly. "But this," she gestured around the shop, at the tools, at me, at herself. "This feels real." The word hung there. Real. Martin looked at her like he didn't recognize her anymore. Maybe he didn't. "You're choosing this?" he asked, voice tight. She met his gaze, steady. "I'm choosing to stay," she said. "Not forever, not dramatically, just to stay." That was enough. Martin didn't argue, didn't raise his voice. He just nodded once, the way people do when something slips out of their control and there's no way to grab it back without breaking something else. He set the envelope down and walked out of the shop without another word. The door closed behind him with a soft click. Angela didn't move for a second. Then she exhaled, long and quiet, like she'd been holding that breath for years. She picked up the note, folded it again, and tucked it into her tool belt, between a measuring tape and a screwdriver. Not as a reminder of what she was supposed to become, but of what she chose not to be. Later that night, after she left, I locked up a shop and stood there for a moment in the quiet. I walked over to the pegboard and ran my fingers over Clara's wrench, still hanging where I'd placed it. Bent. Worn. Still working. People think being underestimated is a weakness. It's not. It's space. Space to build something solid while they're still busy deciding you don't matter. And by the time they realize they were wrong, you're already standing on something they can't take from you.